I thought I'd start off with a story. That's always a good way to start in workshops and webinars like this. So I guess about 4 weeks ago, I was on a Zoom call with a lady who owned and ran an events management company, or at least she did do. I remember her saying to me, she said, "This bloody coronavirus crisis has broken my events business. It's in the process of breaking me," she said, trying to hold back the tears. "I've got no alternative but to mothball the business until whenever all this is all over, whenever that is." I paused for a moment. I remember saying to her, "What else have you considered?" She said, "None. We're an events management business. The world is not holding events, Steve. Therefore, customers have no need for me or my business or events." I remember saying to her and just sort of challenging her. I knew her pretty well. So I said to her, "Well, that'd be true if all you had was a basics events management business. But you and your business are far more than that. You really solve problems for customers, not just about events. That's just your delivery model. You've got a great load of contacts out there in the world who can help solve problems for some of your customers. You've got really great relationships. You've got a marketing system that can enable experts to get together with people with problems. Seems to me that you've got a business that's actually in more demand than ever before. There's so many more problems. It's just at the moment, these customers that you have, they still got the same problems. They still want to know, they still have the same questions. It's just not through mass gathering events. People are still buying people to get answers to those questions. They're just not buying you or your events right now." I remember saying to her, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And what I suggested to Michelle was actually that what she needed to do is maybe just reinvent or maybe pivot the business a little bit to think about how she could still solve those problems and do that job for those customers. Maybe it's not a mass gathering event. And I remember her challenging back quite rightly and saying, "Well, that's not going to gain as much revenue or as profit as the big events." And I said, "Maybe not. But possibly other additional related jobs that you could do, other things that you could do for that problem may actually be a really high profit, maybe a niche market, maybe a premium price for when the world gets back to the new normal." And that might be a new venture for you. That might be a growth area for your business. And I remember her sort of saying, "Well, this sounds like a really good idea. Let's do it. What have I got to lose?" And I said that, exactly the same. It's that the quality and the growth of your business will never outrun the quality and growth of the thinking that you put into it. Now's not the time to panic. Now's the time to think and plan and work out where your growth areas could be. What other things could you do for your customers to grow? What other new customers could you identify? And how do you pull that together? We're all often very much focused on our sort of in the box thinking, and we've got to get out of that box and start thinking a different way. And that was really why I guess Winning Pitch asked me to deliver this program today. What we're trying to do is really think about where are the growth opportunities for you and your business. What you'll realize today is that this is probably a full day workshop that I'm delivering in about an hour. So bear with us on that one. But what you'll get from today is 5 things. The first thing is, I hope to take you through a process whereby you can identify new additional related jobs you could do for your end user customer. Where might those new things be? The second thing is identifying what are the new customers that maybe also require that job doing for them. So we've got new things you can do for existing customers and new customers. The third area is about how do you go about evaluating which job customer growth opportunity you focus on. Because one thing creating ideas, but it's another thing prioritizing and implementing them. The fourth area we'll look at, we had a number of requests from businesses that said, look, we're in a face-to-face delivery type organization, business model. How can we shift to a more online delivery model? So what I've got, a number 4 little present for you guys, is a model canvas of what are the opportunities for you and your business to deliver something online. And that hopefully will give you some fresh ideas there. The last area that we'll be looking at is really looking at, I suppose, in terms of how do you pull that together into a business model canvas. And I'll talk you through a story of a business that achieved that. And hopefully there'll be some lessons learned for you guys. I guess each of these 5 steps are all very, very practical. So you'll get not only a PDF of this presentation, but what I'm hoping for as well, you get the templates as well. So you can actually apply it. There's a lot of webinars at the moment that are on that are just talk. What you get from this one, I hope, is a bit of talk, but also most importantly, practical tools that you can take away and use that could make a big difference to the growth of your business and successfully accessing finance to do that. So those are the 5 areas. I guess the other thing to mention at this point in time is that for some people on the call today, all 5 areas will be absolutely bang on. You'll enjoy and use and get value from all 5. For some people, it may just be 1 or 2 areas, 1 or 2 of the techniques that are really useful for you. But I'm hoping because of the way we've done it, it's in such a way whereby even if it's just 1 or 2, it'll certainly be worth the investment in time that you've done today. So, unless anybody's got any questions, let's crack on. So the first area that we spoke about was what new related jobs could you do for your end user customer? So a couple of decades ago, a chap called Theodore Levitt said that people don't buy drill bits, they buy holes. And everybody looked at him as if he was a little bit bizarre. But in essence, what he was saying was that forget about the sort of products or services you provide. Each of us, basically as an organization, you've got to think about the job that our customer temporarily hires us to do for them. So in this case, in our example there, people don't buy drill bits. Maybe they do. This organization, I guess, may say they design and manufacture specialist steel. That's what the business they're in. But for me, they're probably in the creating holes business. And in order to compete in that business, they need to do that better and more cheaply than their competitors. The job that they do is help their end user customer create a hole. And when they think about it in that way, then that could be they could be creating hole punches. They could be in the tunneling. They create holes. That's the job they do. There may be upstream jobs on that one. So, for example, an upstream job of drilling a hole is maybe, I guess, measuring and maybe marking up where you're going to put the hole. Let's say it's for a picture frame. Downstream, making a hole. Downstream job of that may be something like cleaning up afterwards. But that's the business they're in, the creation of holes. And then we can move on maybe to the hammer organization. So what business are they in? Well, yes, they might describe themselves in the tool industry or the tool market or the hammer market even. But for me, they are in the job that they do for the customer is applying pressure with a blunt instrument. And there's upstream and downstream jobs associated with that, but that's the job that they do. Moving on along, if we look at the picture hanging wire, picture frame business, you know, they may say that if you ask them what business are they in, they'll say, well, we manufacture wires and fasteners for frames. Fine, okay. But if we think about what job that they help the customer do, they actually help the customer hang the perfect picture maybe. And they must do that better and they must do that cheaper than their competitors in order to compete. So they could choose to be in a wider job if they're looking at expansion or growth in their business. So they could say, well, maybe we create the perfect remote working environment better and more cheaply than our competitors. So once they start talking about creating the right environment, then they could sell chairs, they could sell desks, they could sell air conditioning. It's really about what they see as their business. And I would say my proposal for the next 30, 40 minutes is for you guys to think about, instead of thinking about products and services that you do, think about the job that you help your business do, your customer do. What do they hire you to get a job done? So if we just quickly look at that in terms of some other examples, I suppose the first thing is to let's strip it back for you. You know, I've explained this sort of theory of jobs to be done. Think about your business. Let's strip it all the way back if we're thinking about growth. Think about your business. So what we need to do, if we're going to define the job that we do from a customer's perspective, it is to think about an action verb, an object, and some context. So for example, our organization, Winning Pitch, action verb is help, object of action is my business, context is grow to fulfill its potential. So our customers would say, they could describe us as a management consultant or a training organization, but they might say, well, Steve, Winning Pitch, what they do for my customer is, what my business is, they help my business grow to fulfill its true potential. Action, verb, object, context. I have a business that I've been working with that does an anxiety app that helps teenagers with their anxiety. What business are they in? Well, they would say we're in the app development or SOP development business. But I've challenged them on that and said, no, you're in the support teenagers to manage their anxiety business. So don't define yourself by the technology. This could be something that maybe you might want to reach out to maybe their teenagers' parents. It might not be an app. It might be a text product. It might be a live chat product. It might even be a telephone product. What's the job that you're doing? Automotive manufacturer, you know, when I spoke to them, you know, action, verb, object, context, you know, they supply components to build high performance sports cars. Another organization I worked with provide remote workers with the perfect working environment is the picture framing one. And then finally, when we were thinking about ventilators, there was a lot of talk at the start of COVID that the government were asking for people, for ventilator manufacturers. And I remember speaking to a number of manufacturers and I said, you know, what about this opportunity? And they said, no, we're not a ventilator manufacturer. And I said, they're not actually asking for a ventilator manufacturer. What they need is an organization that can help pump lungs with oxygen when COVID-19 has caused them to fail. And that actually launched a whole load of new solutions to that particular job to be done, rather than creation of new ventilators. So you see, hopefully you see where I'm coming from in terms of, I think when we only think about our own products and our own services, it's really easy to get into that narrow funnel vision. When we expand that to think about the job that we're doing, the job that this customer is hiring us to do for them, it opens our minds up and we can see new, fresh opportunities. So let me give you a couple of more examples just to sort of show you how this can work. So an organization I was working with were a data analysis company. So they did data analysis and they did infographics and they did wonderful data evaluation. So their customer were doctors. So what's the core job that a doctor needs to do? That was my question to the data company, at which they looked a bit bizarrely at me. And I said, well, what is it they're trying to do? What's a doctor do? What's his core job or her core job? And we ended up with this phrase here: help me deliver care to my patients. That's kind of their core job as a doctor. Now, for every core job, there are a number of what you might call supporting jobs, which are secondary to the core job. They help that doctor do that main job, if you like, at a second tier. The quality of the supporting jobs, obviously, contributes to the quality of the core job. So this let's just say this doctor has a core job of help me deliver care to my parents. The sort of supporting jobs you might want to see that they need also doing and they need to help with, they need to hire someone or something to help them do it, are these sort of things. First one is maybe help me stay current on my research so I can do my core job. Another supporting job could be help me manage medical records. Another one could be help me diagnose medical conditions. Another one might be help me to develop a winning team. So these are the couple of supporting jobs, really relevant ones that help them do their core job. And the quality they do these, or they ask someone to do these on their behalf, delivers the quality of the core job. You can see here that I'll call them Data Analytics Limited. Their core competence, this is the customer that I was working with, basically they could do rapid data analysis very, very fast. And they had an AI algorithm to solve some data problems, so they could do that faster. And they had some really good data visualization experts that could present findings in a very creative, infographic-y way. So where do they fit into this? Well, it turns out that they were sort of like a second job down. So they contributed to the supporting job of help me diagnose medical conditions. And that one was help me analyze lab result data. So that was their job they did, and they did that very well. So what we were able to do when we mapped this out for this organization is to see where their job, the job they were doing, where that fit into a context of the other jobs that this doctor needed doing. And they were particularly interested in the data analysis related jobs that these other supporting jobs had. So if we just dig down that a little bit more, the supporting job help me diagnose medical conditions. You'll recall I said they supported that with a next level down job called help me analyze lab result data. But other things that this doctor needed were help me assimilate lab data with the patient's history, help me to apply data to make the correct diagnosis, help me to simulate data-driven scenarios for patients. So this doctor actually had a lot more data-related jobs that they could do. They hadn't seen them, they hadn't asked for them because they were so focused on what we do is help analyze lab result data. What we did then was actually map some other lower level jobs out as well. So when we looked at help me to stay current on research, we looked at things like, well, help me to access articles or journals, help me to share critical lab results with peers, or help me to access the hot topics at conferences. And finally, help me to develop new data analysis skills, a training one there. And this organization I was working with actually started to look at some of these and thought, actually, we could do some of those jobs as well. And the same with another area there, as you can see, when we spread it out to help me to share info, to collaborate with staff, you know, help me to define what data they will be useful. What about platforms? So what we're able to do with this organization, once we opened up and once we started to map out the jobs to be done at a second and even a third tier level, first of all, they started to understand the customer a lot more and they started to think about it. And what we could do, what we did with them was basically look at, well, maybe there's two sorts of jobs here. There's jobs that are adjacent, that are maybe just one step away from what they're doing already, which in this case was help me analyze lab result data. And the second sort of type of job, where you can see in gray there, were related, but maybe a bit further away. So maybe a bit more risky, maybe a bit more challenging for them to do. So I think bottom left there, help me to develop new data analysis skills. You know, they weren't in the training area, but they could be, but it was related. The adjacent ones, the adjacent opportunities were much closer. So you can start to divide up. Once you've mapped out your customers' jobs to be done at different levels, what you can do then is look at which are adjacent, close by, easier to do, and those that are related, a bit further, a bit of a stretch. But nevertheless, if you're going for funding, you want to be able to demonstrate that you can see the potential in that market. So here we've got this, what we call the sort of new jobs identification matrix for your customer. And what we found at Winning Pitch actually was the fact that when we use this, using the action, verb, object, and contextual clarifier, is we can write these down, these jobs that our customer, what we do on behalf of our customers. So help my business grow to its fulfilled potential, recover my cash flow, during the coronavirus crisis. And you can see here, I'm still following the action, verb, object, and context. Leverage my network of contacts to build a strong user community. Fund my technology to win more high profit customers. Sell spare capacity. Train my staff. And maybe even diversify my operations whilst we can't do face-to-face. So we wrote these down as sort of other jobs we could do for our existing customers. And then what we also did was play a bit of used it as a bit of an ideas box. So we're able to sort of take one of the verbs, maybe, and then an object, maybe one it wasn't chosen for originally, and then a context. So let me just show you what I mean by that. So we could take leverage from the verbs, we could take my technology from the object, and maybe a contextual clarifier to quickly generate a revenue stream. So we can generate new jobs by simply using a list of these jobs to be done as a bit of an ideas box, and we can come up with new ideas. So leverage my technology. We could start somewhere else. We could start with to win high profit customers and work to the left, my spare capacity. So we could diversify my spare capacity to win high profit customers. We could start in the middle with my staff, and we could say fund my staff during the coronavirus crisis. All I'm demonstrating here is just a way that you can slice and dice and use this as a bit of an ideas box to generate and innovate new jobs that you could do for your customer. And that's a good place to start in terms of looking at how we can grow. The obvious place to grow is with your existing customers, looking at new, higher value, new ways of helping to grow. So I guess 3 tasks, I suppose, if you're thinking of this as a particular key thing for you guys. So the first thing I would say is map the jobs that your customer does. That's a good place to start. And particularly at the moment, you know, a lot of customers are very, very busy, but also a lot of customers will very much value your insight and your curiosity into saying, you know, we currently do this, this, and this for you, this sort of job for you, but what other jobs do you have that are related to that? So, you know, map them out. Look at what their core jobs are and look at maybe some of the supporting jobs. Look at the job that you do for your customer, and is there any upstream or downstream from that or across from that? What you can do then is actually, when you've identified a couple of likely candidates in terms of new jobs that you could do, is maybe interview or have a conversation with them at least to understand how important that job is. Is it an important job to them? Is it a priority at the moment that's just not happening? What about the measures of success? How do they measure the success of that job they're doing at the moment? Not just customer satisfaction, but maybe at the next level down. So in terms of, if we were to looking at the picture frame manufacturer, let's say, you know, I guess the measure of success there would be how long it took to hang the picture. Was the picture, the proportion of time the picture was straight and angled at the right time? What about dissatisfaction levels? So again, in the picture frame example, let's just use that. How satisfied are people when they're drilling a hole in a wall? What are they worried about? The drilling into a wall? What about the wires? What about everything, like what a mess it makes, etc.? And then finally, under or overserved. To what extent are there lots of people in this market already that are doing pretty much all these things or some of these things? If it's underserved, there may be more an opportunity timing-wise to go in there and take more of the share. And then the final one, the third area, I suppose, is about generating ideas. So this is about, I guess, generating, improving new features that could improve your existing offering, and identifying new products that could disrupt or complement what you are doing. So this first section has really, I guess, been all around the jobs to be done. It's all about getting you to think about, if you want to grow your business, one way of thinking about this is using this jobs to be done type philosophy and identifying new growth areas that you can move into. We do that through mapping the jobs, interviewing clients, and looking at where the opportunities are. So I thought I'd just pause there because that's quite a lot to get through, but I don't know whether anybody's got any questions or anything like that on this particular area. James?
There's none that have come into the chat, but I guess there's a couple from me that I just I guess it's one question combined, or two questions combined into one. So I guess why and when might this be important to when raising finance? I guess more than anything.
Sure. I guess what a lot of finance people want to see, particularly if it's growth finance, is they want to see, I guess, a fairly credible growth story. So how and where are you going to win this business from? And if you're talking about entering new markets, I think what's important is being able to articulate an approach that you've taken, and also have a portfolio of opportunities. So rather than just hanging your hat on one, yes, we want to go with one, we want to prioritize one, but also it's always impressive for funders to see the fact that you've actually got maybe a roadmap of ideas, a portfolio of ideas that you can bring on stream as and when, in order to keep that growth traction going. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's yeah. Thank you. Is there any further questions from the audience? No.
Cool.
Okay, we'll crack on.
Back onto the second area. So we've talked about new jobs to be done. What we're going to talk about in the second section is new customers. So what other new customers also require these jobs doing for them? So when I'm looking at opportunities, market opportunities, I guess for me, I try and keep it as simple as possible. So to me, a market opportunity, the way you define it when you're thinking about writing this into maybe a business plan, or if you're trying to go in for finance, if you need to look at it in terms of a strategy paper, it is the market opportunity to me needs a job to be done and an executor, a job executor or customer, you might say. So in our example that we said earlier, the opportunity for that organization, the data analysis organization, was the job to be done was help me analyze lab result data, and the customer or the job executor were the doctors. You put the jobs to be done with the customer and you get a market opportunity. What we can do there though is actually look at who else. So we could think about help me analyze lab result data across a number of different customers. So the question here is, who else analyzes lab result data? And it sounds like a simple question, but a lot of people don't ask themselves that. They're too busy servicing, in this case, the doctors, too busy to think about where the potential new growth opportunities are. And I get that, and I'm very busy as well, but we've got to spend some time in terms of really tapping into that growth potential. So we could actually complete that left-hand column with all the job that we are doing currently, which in this case is help me analyze lab result data. But who else analyzes lab result data? Well, obviously doctors do, because that's our customer at the moment, but dentists. And again, what I'm interested here is identifying maybe new niches, new smaller, higher value market segments that may actually offer higher profitability in terms of opportunities. So doctors, dentists, and I've split that down into endodontists and orthodontists. The fire service, fire investigations, we can split down there. The police, and maybe again, there's a couple of niches there that might be interested in exploring. Crime scene investigation, or maybe the ballistics team. Who else? Crash investigation. They analyze lab result data as well. And maybe we could pick a niche in that one, which might be air accidents for the sake of argument. So what we're doing here is actually trying to extrapolate who else needs this job doing for them. And is there a niche or a specialist area, higher profit market, that sits within the bigger, more obvious market? And what we can do there, let's say for the sake of argument, through some relatively quick filtering, we could pick out, let's say for the sake of argument, orthodontists and crime scene investigation. And maybe our little bit of quick and dirty research has proved that there are enough of these around. It's commercially viable, more so than perhaps some of the other ones. But it's a fairly rough and ready analysis, but maybe we could prioritize those two. What we have also got to consider is risk in all this. And one of the questions I got asked last time I delivered this webinar was, the risk here, Steve, is the fact that we've got a business that's got a bit of a problem at the moment with its existing model, and we pivot to another model, and if we don't do that correctly, all we do is end up with 2 failing business models, which is an absolutely valid point. So what we've got to do is be very aware of the risk. So what we do is look at it in this way. We use this grid quite a lot. Is along the top, we say, well, who are existing customers? And we mentioned adjacent customers earlier on. So they're one step next to the existing, and then related, a little bit further away, more of a stretch. And we can put them across the top. And then down the left-hand side, we can look at the existing job we do, maybe the adjacent job we do, which again is just one step away, close by to what we do already. And then a related job, which is much further away, higher risk. So let's just fill that in now. So along the top, for the data analysis company, they might see this organized, they might see this opportunity as well. Our existing customer are doctors, maybe the adjacent customer, one step away, could be orthodontists. And maybe the related customer, a bit more of a stretch, a bit more risky, is the crime scene investigator. So we've got those along the top. In terms of the next area is, well, the existing job grid, we can fill that line in because what we do is help analyze lab result data. So we can do that for the doctor, we do that already. We could do that for the orthodontist, and we could do that for the crime scene investigator. And then we could take maybe one of the adjacent jobs and apply that to the doctor, orthodontist, and crime scene investigator. And we could look at the way the interactions there. So the middle one, adjacent job, adjacent customer. So we'd be helping orthodontists with their lab data history. And then if we stretch it out even further, related jobs, one stage further, we can do help me to train my staff to carry out data analysis. Bit of a stretch for this company, but they could do that for existing customers, adjacent customers, and related customers. The reason for this grid, though, is to note that the further you get down bottom right, the more risk there is. And the more you say top left, the less risk there is. So yes, let's go for stretching, let's go for ambition, but be very aware of the fact that the further away you get from your top left, existing customer, existing job, the more risky it is. Doesn't mean say you shouldn't do it, but it does mean you should think very carefully about the team and the resources you put forward. And any funder or any person who's looking to invest in your organization would be very quick to ask these sort of questions. So, since we're talking about funders and evaluation, that leads us on to the third area. So first, we talked a little bit about jobs to be done, new jobs you could do for your customers. Second thing we talked about was looking at new customers who may also want new jobs or adjacent jobs. And we talked about where the risk was there. So the third area we're going to talk about is really, I guess, looking at evaluation. So how do we evaluate which job or customer growth opportunity you should focus on? So when we look at evaluating jobs and opportunities, we generally split it into 2 areas. There is the potential, the overall potential for that idea opportunity, and then there is the challenge. And these are the 2 dimensions by which we measure how attractive an idea is. So you can see here on my on the grid you can see in front of you, overall potential we can rate as low, mid, high, super high on the left-hand side, on the vertical, and on the horizontal going across, we've got low, mid, high, super high again. And if we complete those boxes, what we can do is we can get a 2 by 2, and we can start to map out what sort of ideas fit in what sort of boxes. So let me just share with you, this is sort of a technique we use in terms of, so low potential and low challenge. That's, if you like, I suppose that's sort of a quick win. And I suppose when we talk about potential and challenge, potential is really, for me, is if you think about a mountain range. So this is sort of the height of the mountain, or the height of the mountain range. That's the potential. So imagine that the set of market opportunities that you have, if each opportunity is a mountain on that landscape, then the height of that mountain is the potential, the greatest the potential you can offer. If you think about challenge along the horizontal, then that's really about the obstacles that are stopping you from climbing that mountain quickly. So that's the dimension there. So that's kind of an interesting way of thinking about potential and challenge. So bottom left, low potential, low challenge is effectively your quick wins. So although they offer fairly limited chance of value creation, that's a pretty safe option in some people's eyes. And they may offer a bit of a quick win opportunity in the short term, maybe as a stepping stone to a bigger opportunity. So that's quick wins. Overall potential low, overall challenge low. But finance and funders quite interested in them because they're a quick win. Top left, super high or high potential, low overall challenge is what we call sometimes the gold mine. So here what we're looking at there is I guess usually as a result of a significant unmet need in the market that no one's really addressed before. So, or you might possess some unique know-how or to overcome a particular challenging hurdle or one that others simply have never overcome before. This is like this is, from a funding point of view, this is what they want to look at. That's what they're looking for, is lots of potential, but relatively low challenge. Compare that to the questionable. So here what we have is something with a very high challenge, super high challenge, and relatively low potential. And it's easy to dismiss these, but I guess these are the lots of typically sort of tech organizations that you see, that funders see particularly, that I guess they're sort of a lot of failed startups because they're trying to produce a product that probably nobody wants or there's no compelling value proposition for. They've overcome the challenges technically, but there's no market potential. There's no real viable market for it. So it would go bottom right. And then finally, top right, moonshots. So these are the super high sort of overall challenge and super high potential. And from an investor's point of view, this is quite interesting because whilst there's obviously risk associated to this, for some investors, these might actually be your most attractive opportunities for them to invest in. The moonshot options, I suppose, may fit as your primary market or as a long-term goal where you want to go. And they should be positioned like that with potential investors. If we had more time, we could talk a little bit more about how we actually evaluate these, and these will obviously be in your slide share in your PDFs, but these are some ways of actually evaluating how much potential and how much challenge there is in your ideas. But quickly speaking, potential is about, is there a real compelling reason to buy? Is there a real market volume there? Is it economically viable? And you can score yourself there and give yourself a quick score for overall potential. You do the same for challenge. So here we're looking at, going back to my analogy of the mountains, if potential is about how high the mountain is, the challenge is about the obstacles. How can we overcome the obstacles? So the sort of obstacles we're talking here when we're assessing are things like implementation, time to revenue, and external sort of risks like pest analysis and things like that. And if we score those, and I'll do that, we do that very quickly here, what you can see is, let's say, for example, we could give this a score of this crime scene investigation one that we spoke about. Maybe potential is a compelling reason to buy. Well, let's say it's a mid one. Maybe market volume, it's not a massive market, it's quite specialist, so that's mid. Economic viability, maybe some good margins, so that might be high, and we could average that out and call that, mid to high sort of opportunity. If we looked at the challenge, we could do the same. So maybe we actually think the implementation obstacles are actually pretty good. They're pretty high. Time to revenue is this, and external risks are this. So maybe overall that might be a super high. So with that potential and with that challenge, you'd see that they would fall pretty much into the questionable sort of idea in terms of potential and challenge. And we can actually assess other ideas. Fire service might be a moonshot. Dentist might be a gold mine. And, for the sake of argument, air crash investigators might be somewhere between the two. So this is a really useful way of demonstrating to investors, but also for yourself. It's always good to have more than one idea. So what we want to do is generate a number of ideas and then use templates and grids like this to identify the ones that you're going to go for and understand what the implications of that are. So that's talks a little bit about assessment then. The fourth area that I've been asked to talk about is really to look at and help organizations identify whether there is an online dimension, an online delivery model for their business. And here I'm not just talking about online takeaway businesses. I'm on about your organization, your business. What else could you do online where you don't have to get face to face with someone that is actually adding value to your customer, is another job that they need doing? So what we did here was actually to look at different sorts of online, I guess, websites or platforms that people have. And, in most cases, most people's websites that I see, a lot of the smaller businesses certainly, are fairly basic, unmonitored brochureware websites. I guess I see that as being level one of maybe 5 levels of what an online platform could do. The second level, and see maybe a few more of these, is websites and online, your website, your online platform, portal, whatever it is, that basically has sensible conversations with your customers. So these might be industry websites, maybe it's free access, but maybe you pay for some premium info for people who are registered. Third level might be more content rich, maybe a paywall for premium delivery. Fourth area might be a membership sort of model, get the job done. And then the fifth area might be the go-to industry platform for your industry. And again, pre-COVID, a lot of businesses that I work with would never have thought, even dreamt of such an idea. But now a number of them are doing, because what they realize is that, as we put on there, data is the new gold. And if you think about the insights you get from getting customer data, insights, what they're worried about, what their problems are, what they're buying, what they're not buying, what's going well, what's not going well, if you could get that for your market, then not only does that put you in a very strong position for your traditional business, but it also puts you in a massively powerful position in terms of that insight. And some businesses, the insight and data might actually be more valuable when they come to sell the business than the actual traditional business. So very quickly, how do we think about jobs that could be delivered online over and above the ones we do at the moment? So this is a canvas that really outlines jobs that could be delivered online. So here, what we've got here is, you can see it's a bit like a business model canvas, but it's got 8 areas. And what I've tried to do is think about a job, any job that your business does for a customer. And let's just say that, let's just say that comes in at number 5. You execute, you do something, you implement something. So that's kind of around box number 5. But what I'm thinking about is upstream and downstream from that, online. So upstream, if you like, you need to, before you actually execute and do whatever you do, there's maybe a confirmation piece there, maybe. There's maybe a preparation, something there, set up, organize something, train something. Before that, there's maybe a location thing, to gather, to access, to diagnose maybe. And then before that even, there's maybe a definition sort of phase where you plan, you budget, you trial. All those upstream jobs could be done online and they all add value to your customer. Downstream, after number 5, there's maybe something there about monitoring online or checking or verifying, possibly modifying, number 7, reviewing, updating, and then maybe concluding online, storing, reporting, sign off, that sort of stuff, electronic forms. So if I just walk you through very quickly a worked example of that. So this was an organisation I worked with, which was a manufacturing consultancy organisation, and their customer was the production manager, the end user. Job to be done, verb, object, online, is improve, object, productivity of my production line. So improve productivity of my production line. That's the job that this consultancy had to do for this production manager. So what I went through with them was to actually start to look at what sorts of things that could mean for them. And it will be different for your organization. And let me be clear, I'm not saying you do all these things. This is just a way of generating some good ideas. But for this organization, the defining part could be about maybe some sort of online health check. It could be a live poll. It could be some sort of forecasting tool that they could do right at the start before they did what they did. Locating could be about maybe other partners or helping this customer download some successful process maps. Preparing, maybe there's a YouTube video there or an online training package, maybe even a digital simulation or something like that. Confirming, this is where we look at maybe the 5 things you must do before, or maybe even an Ask Me Anything session with a qualified consultant. All these things are happening upstream before what they do, which is here. Then they can actually do some of what they do online. So the execution side is about maybe related products, selling those, delivery, live streaming support. And then we move a bit more downstream. What about the monitoring of what they do? Or maybe we could set something up online to do some KPIs or dashboards. Modifying, well, there's something there about maybe ask our community or tweaking of shared or peer-to-peer. Or finally, even on the concluding side, podcasts, lessons learned, electronic form sign off, or post a job, find a job, or something like that. So we could spend, literally, we could spend all day on this particular technique. What I wanted to do was just share with you and talk you through a worked example. This is a very powerful way of looking at what areas, what are the jobs you could do that doesn't need face-to-face interaction, and how could we do that? So very powerful tool in that. So that leads us to our final sort of section. Any questions at that stage there before we move into the final section?
None from the audience, but again, I'll fire a few at you. Keep you on your toes. You talked about risk management, and risk obviously comes kind of the mindset of the organization and the individuals leading the organization. I guess just from a kind of a looking at there's been a lot of pivoting that's been taking place during COVID-19. Yeah. I guess from a leadership perspective, what have you found to be the kind of, you work with a number of businesses, I guess, what have you found to be the most common themes as to why pivoting ideas work and don't work?
So I think you touched on a really important point there about sort of it's unique to each business. So I think one thing is really being clear from the start as a management team, or certainly as the owner, what business are you in? Because it's all very well for me to say, oh, the picture hanging business is in the creating an ideal remote working environment. And I think it could be. But also it's down to the way that the business defines itself. And it's everybody's choice as to what business they want to be in. So if they just want to be in picture hanging, then that's fine. But what you've got to do then is once you define and put a box around that, then you've got to explore and really dig deep into that area. Because that's the confines of which you're defining your business. If you want to define it further, then that's great. But it won't work if the business isn't really clear on what business they're in and what they've agreed it to be. I'm absolutely fine if people want a niche, that's absolutely fine. But dig deeper in that niche. Don't try and go all over the place and try and find ideas.
Yeah.
And I think the other final one I would say is stick to your core competencies. You know, particularly at the moment, what we're talking here is about new customers and new jobs. But underlying all these things are some core competencies that your business is really good at, and make the most of those.
Bob, thank you, Steve. And then I've just got one more question. You touched on the attractiveness matrix and mapping, and obviously time constraints for business leaders across the country and during this pandemic have been very much limited to kind of thinking outside the box. You know, this is and I agree, it's an excellent tool to be able to kind of map, you know, what opportunities are out there. I guess from a personal perspective, how often should owners be like this? You know, is it weekly, daily, monthly? Because commonly we'd leave these to like the management meetings every month. But given the kind of circumstances of COVID and the uncertainty, do you think that's been accelerated quite significantly?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think what we're seeing is a lot more businesses, or the more successful businesses, being a lot close to their customers and understanding in a very sensitive way, forecasting out when they will buy and what they will buy and how much that will be. So the business has quite a closer, or as close as possible in a very uncertain world, some idea of how much cash is going in the till over the next few months. So that's the first step. And I think where there are gaps, and a lot of businesses do have gaps, it's then I would say every month, that management meeting for me is really important. And it's an opportunity perhaps for the senior management team to look at what the gaps are in terms of cash and in terms of growth, and then use things like the attractiveness grid as a way of discussing which opportunities they're going to go for. And this section I'm just going to do now is about business model canvas. And I've been with some businesses whereby, you know, every month, you know, they'll look at a number of business model canvas options and pick one and test it that month. And then the next month they'll come back and present back on what they found, and then maybe look at how we need to change it. So yeah, every month based on good customer information.
Thanks, Steve.
So last section, number 5. So we're going at quite a pace, but I think so far we've managed to, we've covered off in terms of the first one, in terms of the customers, what new jobs we could do for your existing customers. Second one, we looked at new customers who are out there. Third area we looked at is in terms of assessing those. How do we decide which are our moonshots and which are our quick wins? And then the fourth area there, we looked at very quickly, we looked at a way of, I guess, thinking about how we could maybe move to some growth areas that are online opportunities. And I think just about every business I've met has at least one online opportunity they could move into. Certainly not 8, but maybe 1, and they should be looking at that. And even when we get back to the new normal, whatever that looks like, having that online part might actually be a really strong part of the business, and the bit that actually is the growth area and the higher profit area. So number 5, how can I build the best idea into a business model? So a number of you, I'm guessing, might be familiar with this particular technique, the business model canvas. So developed by Osterwalder and a few others, probably about 10 years ago now. This is a great tool and technique. Funders like it because it creates, I guess, a consistent way of talking about how a business works and how it adds value and how it makes profit. It's a really good, solid 9-box approach to that. And I think it deals with it in enough detail to get your head round. So I appreciate 1 or 2 of you may have already seen this, and some people on the call may have never seen it. So I'm just going to do a very quick introduction to it and show you how we use this as a means of thinking and discussing and assessing new growth opportunities, maybe even online growth opportunities. So let's kick off. So this is the business model canvas. I've written in the name of our company here. I've made them up based on a business I know. And it's a gin company, and we'll call it Rossili Bay Gin. And this is their business model pre-COVID. So I'll use the business model canvas to describe their as-is situation. So their sort of customer segments, you can see here were, in terms of looking at those, well, they had, at the moment, their customers pre-COVID are in terms of premium, I guess, quality, bars, hotels, etc. That was their customer. Their end users, they would define, I guess, as sort of the gin curious, people who don't buy on price. So that would be the customer segments. We often start in that box there by defining customer segments. Generally, I typically then skip into the middle box, which is a value proposition. So what jobs are they doing for their customer? What is it they offer? And they offer obviously a small batch artisan gins, but what job are they doing? It's an interesting question with a gin company. So what they would say is they provide a unique drink experience, tasting slowly distilled gin to unlock the tantalizing tastes and feelings of the Pembroke Beach. They've obviously had a marketing company involved in that. But that's the job that they do. They provide a unique drink experience. Yes, they provide and manufacture gin, but that's the job they do. The channels are the routes to market. So here, this organisation has a network of distributors and a factory shop. And they would describe their relationships that they have with their customers as more experiential rather than just transactional. If we move over to the key activities, what does this business do? Well, they do a number of things. They procure, they obviously do production of distilling, infusing, condensing, bottling, and they do marketing, sales, and distribution. Those are the key activities that you'd find this business doing. Next, what key resources do they have? If you like, what is it that they have that differentiates them in the market, that builds a moat around their business away from their competitors? So they would say that it's their master distiller, who's a regulatory expert. They have a secret recipe, as they all do, and they have equipment to distill the mixture. That was one of their key resources as well. Partners. What sort of partners do they have? Well, this organisation has a number of external partners that they need to rely on to help the business grow. And these are suppliers of things like alcohol, berries, botanicals. They also have a marketing agency. They're very close also to the Wine and Spirits Trade Association. So these are the key partners that they work with. Last two boxes, costs. So when we do your business model canvas, typically we only look at the sort of top 3 costs, just because that's probably about 80% of the cost base. So the cost structure here, we're looking at production, materials, sales and marketing, and staff, and premises maybe. Those are the key areas of cost. And then to finish off the business model canvas, the last 9th box is how do they put money in the till? And that's through sales of gin, and that's factory tours as well. So that's the as-is, that's how it works, that's the business in a pre-COVID world. And that's the business model canvas there with 9 boxes. So COVID comes along and they're unable to deliver. They're unable to deliver this model through a face-to-face situation, through a face-to-face delivery model. Customers still have a job to be done with regard to a unique gin experience. It's just the delivery, the route to market has changed dramatically. So they're going to have to shift to online. The customers and the problems and the jobs to be done are still there. We're just changing that online, that route to market. So they decided to do an online membership club, gin club. And here you can see in every month you get a new type of gin with some special botanicals, some nibbles and various other things. And this was their idea of a new growth area. So we could look at this online membership model that they were looking at, take the existing model and just overlay that with some things that have changed. So we can see here, if we were going to describe this to a funder or to our own team, management team, or our own staff, or even our own customers, what's changed on the business model canvas when we go for this online membership model, this gin club model? Okay, well, the value proposition's changed. We've now got some an offering that's to do with a bottle a month, perfect pair tonics. We box this and share this out to you. We might even do a 20-minute video log, maybe some Zoom group tastings of the gin. And what we're trying to create is almost like a gin connoisseur virtual learning environment. But think about if you've got that, the information you get, the relationships, the trust you would build with your customers. What else is different? Well, the end user is still the same, but obviously we've shifted now slightly to a slightly different model in terms of we've got an online, from our point of view there, we've got a new gin customer from adjacent markets. The channels, we're going online. So it's an online shop and it's home delivery. The customer relationship is no longer, well, it is experiential, but it's now more about community. The key activities have shifted slightly. So what's different now is that we need more digital content generation. We need more online training, and we need fulfillment boxing up. And the key resources there are around a thriving online community of gin connoisseurs. And imagine for this business what difference that would make if they could create that. Even when we're going back to the new normal, they'll be entering that new normal with a whole new community of gin connoisseurs they can sell more gin to and other related products. What about key partners, how they've changed? Well, far more of an emphasis with this idea around they need more web design partners. They maybe need the Royal Mail delivery service. They were even talking about a branded clothes affiliate partner who they could swap leads with and do co-promotions with. And maybe the Wine and Spirit Education Trust instead of the other trade association. Costs? Well, yeah, a lot more web design and a lot more content. But these are bright, sparky people and they love writing about gin and they love doing videos about gin. So they can do that. Revenue streams. So how do they put money in the till? Well, here we're looking at maybe an online membership model. So £29 a month or something like that. Maybe an online shop, maybe selling adjacent products. So this would be a way of maybe describing to a potential funder or a potential supplier, or maybe even your management team, what this new idea looks like with a bit more meat on the bone. So they can actually get it and start to think about, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It's a really good way of on one page summarizing it. Another quick example, this organisation got this missive through from the UK government, and it talks about the types of support they required, where they were desperate for support. And you can see down there, you can see that one of the lower bullet points talks about the fact that what they actually need is sort of third one down, protective equipment for healthcare workers such as masks, gowns and sanitizers, hand sanitizers. So what's a core competence of a hand sanitizing manufacturer? Well, it's to do with distillation of alcohol, which was one of their core competencies, one of the things that they had. So again, back to the business model canvas. The as is one is still ghosted there, but what might this idea look like if they moved to a COVID-19 hand sanitizer gel business model? So customers, well, in this case, the value proposition here could be to do with help me supply alcohol-based products that fight infection, help me clean my hands so they're infection-free. The customers here are slightly different in that the customers here are actually NHS, and maybe at this stage they were looking at their key workers from their families. What sort of relationship are we looking at there? Maybe more transactional and more community-based. What about activities? How would they change? Well, you'd need a different set of mixing and blending processes and maybe equipment. Resources, well, we're looking there more at packaging and labeling approvals. And in terms of key partners, we'd need some new suppliers, maybe NHS procurement platform, maybe World Health Organization. So a different set of partners. But again, what we're doing is just building up to look at how this idea might work, putting meat on the bone. Channels, there we talk about maybe volunteer delivery van drivers. The costs, pretty much the same. Revenue streams, this particular idea was a not-for-profit venture. So it's important that that gets mentioned, particularly to people who are the shareholders or maybe even the investors. So what we've done there is actually given you a technique, business model canvas, as a way of actually putting some meat on the bone of some of these ideas. Because what we've taken you through is a bit of a journey, and I realise that we've gone pretty quickly. As I say, this is probably a full day workshop that we've managed to crunch down into about an hour and 10 minutes. But what you can see here is basically where we've gone on our journey. We've hopefully given you some tools and techniques that help you look at new additional related jobs you could do for your end customer, a technique for opening your mind to see what they could be. And that really that'll help you identify where the growth is with your existing customers. The second thing we looked at was different ways and a technique to look at new customers that also require your job doing for them. Maybe we could identify some new niche markets that we've never thought of before. The third area we looked at was evaluation, and we looked at the attractiveness map there in terms of moonshots, quick wins, gold mines, questionable. It's really good to show a potential investor that you've got a portfolio of ideas and you had a logical way of selecting and prioritizing. The final one was fourth one was looking at online opportunities for you. If you're stumped at the moment because that face-to-face is your key delivery mechanism, then how else could we do that online? And what other jobs could we do upstream and downstream? Maybe for some organizations I've spoke to, they feel they have to do an online part to their business. That's their next growth opportunity, particularly those in things like professional services. And the fifth area we talked about there was the business model canvas, using that technique as a way of actually putting more meat on the bone of this new opportunity, whether it's a customer or whether it's a new idea for your existing jobs to be done. But it's a very powerful way of talking about the opportunity and the business model and how that adds value. And it's a really good discussion point that you could use for maybe explaining what your new idea or opportunity is to a funder or to your existing management team, and work on where could it go wrong, what do we need more insight on, and use that to run some experiments so you can actually validate those areas there. So I think that concludes really in terms of what we've talked about. I'm hoping that you've got something from today. Apologies, we went really quite fast, but we covered quite a lot. But as James said, you'll get a copy of the slides, the templates, and if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to take them now.